Welcome everyone to the talk, How to Be a Calm Parent. And I have here Paula Poppy. Paula is mum to two amazing autistic children, specialist teacher, ASD, and director of Touch the Spectrum. And she has a range of skills. She is Relax Kids trained. She's a speaker, trainer, and coach, and does so many amazing things, but does particularly, I think you work with children with autism and beyond.
Yes, that's right.
So first of all, Paula, simply put, what is anxiety and how does it affect families?
Very simply put, because I'm sure that by now that they've got lots and lots of information. Very simply put, it's too much stress. It's a side effect of too much stress, and anxiety comes because basically we've just got one thing, two things, three things more than we can actually cope with at that particular time. That is very simply put. It can have physical effects like tummy aches and lack of sleep and insomnia, all of those sorts of things. Emotional effects, so they can become very silent, or they can become very and so on. Behavioural effects, so you can see very challenging behaviour, defiance, meltdown, refusal, avoidance, all of those sorts of things are always related to anxiety or too much stress. And how they affect families very much is that emotions are effective. So if you smile at somebody, they smile back. You almost like catch that emotion, don't you? That you smile back. You can have a fantastic day at work and you get to come in and all hell is breaking loose at home, and straight away it brings you down. It's emotions are effective. You almost catch the emotion. It's very, very different, and I will say this now, it's very, very different from a parent causing a child's anxiety or a child causing a parent's anxiety. Yes, they affect each other, but that the whole cause thing, that's totally different. That could be something totally different. It's often parent blaming. So particularly autistic parents, but parents often get blamed for their children's anxiety. That's a load of rubbish, really. To be honest, it's usually about parent blaming, and that's something completely. Although I deal with that lots.
Okay, just in that moment when my dog Ronnie Barker barked. So this is an interesting one, isn't it? So I think I have a little bit of an autistic dog. Well, I know I do, and he's very, Ronnie, shush. And so I, in that moment, felt very uncalm. So your own experience of having two boys.
No, I have a daughter. I have a daughter and a son.
A son and a son and a daughter. So what situations have you experienced where you have felt uncalm, and how have you managed to get into that calm space?
Well, very often, I mean, going right back to when the children were little, my children are now adults. So if you're going through that now, you will survive. You will survive. You will find a way. Know that. I can tell you that now. But going way, way, way back to when Tim, my son, was sort of 6, he was very aggressive, very challenging behaviour, very reactive. He was very affected by the environment, by outside things, and so he targeted me particularly, or that's what it felt like. He hurt my daughter, and it was all very dramatic, shall we say. And that's where I came across something called the low arousal approach, and I'll tell you more about that later. But it focused
Could
on
you
much
repeat it one
more.
more time for me?
Yeah,
Could you
the
repeat it slowly? What is it?
the low the low arousal approach.
Got it. Thank you.
And it's just an approach that thinks about arousal levels. So how much distraction, how much drive, how much work is needed to get going, and to maintain, to do a task, those sorts of things. It's much easier. It's much easier than that, but it's just about if you think of things like levels of arousal on from very, very sleepy, so from fast asleep to really excited, that's your arousal levels there.
Yeah.
So if you think of Elf at Christmas and how excited he is in Elf, you can think of how excited that is, but you can also see how at the other end of the scale. And each of us have different arousal levels, so different drive levels. So some people can cope with lots and lots of that stress, arousal, and all of those sorts of things, and then other people can't cope with it as much, and are very affected by the environment and all of those sorts of things. So there's a lot more into it, but I'll sort of probably go into it. But in terms of my children, it was that became really very, very important. I've now learned that it's a real approach. It's got lots of benefits, and we didn't have to restrain him the same, because I didn't agree with restraining him. It was, you don't need to restrain children, and that felt very wrong to me. So that's sort of where we learned it. Actually, with my daughter, totally different. Her arousal levels, that she just can't cope with the situation, and she'll opt out. So she tends to avoid situations quite beautifully.
So like shut down.
Yeah. And it sort of changed over the years, as they do, because they grow up. And so we would have to be quite creative about things. We would have to be very and have lots of, we call it a toolbox. We have a toolbox of strategies, and whether it's counting to 10 or giving them warning or transitions, or warning them that this is what we were going to do in a few minutes, whether it was about humour or avoiding things, or just simply going, okay, it's not worth it, just not worth it. So, we wouldn't have challenged that sort of thing.
So that not worth it thing, that is the going for calm, isn't it? Like you don't want to battle. Why be calm?
I mean, being calm, it's like we've said, stress impacts on everything. It impacts on the amount of things you can do. So for me as a parent, I would find when I was really stressed, it was more difficult for me to calm the situation. And if you knew me really well, you would know that I am not the most calm person in the world. I would love to be, but I'm not, because that's not the life we lead. But it is about being calm in the moments that you need to be. A dysregulated adult, so if you're an angry adult, can't calm an angry child. You need to be able to be and you also need to go, actually, right now, this child is not in place to be dealing with this. And that works across the board, but works particularly with autistic children, is that the strategies. We'll learn to cope in this situation, but in a place to understand because they're too busy being cross or being angry, because their brains aren't able to cope with it. And we often use the analogy of you wouldn't teach a drowning child to swim. When the child's drowning, you would rescue them. So that's what you need to look at. A child's upset, a child's angry, a child's whatever. Rescue the situation, calm it down, then teach them it when everything's calm. And it's a bit, I always say, it's not rocket science. It's like just respecting and understanding children are human beings.
Lovely. And so how does Relax Kids relaxation help in those situations, bring that calm?
Well, I was trained by a lovely lady called Anna. You'll know her well. And I will never, ever forget sitting there and thinking when we went through the 7 steps, and she told us the story of children not being able to reach calm when they're still full of energy. Children are naturally full of energy. So they almost have to go through these steps. And the 7 steps of Relax Kids, for me, they're great. It gives you a plan. So, you start at move and you work through play, stretch, feel, and then you go breathe, and then believe, and then relax. And it works through those steps. And if you follow those steps, you can calm children. And I sat there and I thought, actually, that's the same for adults. We can't just simply go, calm down. Because if somebody says, calm down, St. Paula, I'm not going to go, am I? You're likely to get shouted at, because if you need me to calm down, actually, I'm probably not in a calm place. So I just thought, well, these steps make all the difference. And I found those 7 steps, and I refer to them now. I teach the children the 7 steps and the young people that I work with. I teach them the steps. They work out their own way of going, because move for them. If I said to any of them, jump down or run around or whatever, they'd look at me as if to say, Paula, that ain't happening. So we'll often do something like, I'm trying to think of something now, but we'll do our own version of moving around. Actually, our bodies do it naturally. Our bodies give sensory feedback all the time. So children are the fiddlies, those fiddly things. That's them working out a way. Their bodies naturally working out a way to calm down. So if a child
the worst thing you can,
I was going to say,
the worst thing you can do. Sorry, go on.
If a child needs a fiddly, that means their anxiety's high. So exactly, the worst thing you can do is take it away.
Or be still. Be still. Stop moving. Stop fiddling. And it's just what their body needs to do. Yeah.
And I just find. Sorry, go on.
I was just going to say, it's like a dog, needing to have a shake to sort of get rid of all that emotion and anxiety or whatever's just happened. They shake it off. And it's like that for children. They need something.
Absolutely. And I think for myself, the breathe, the stretch and the breathe are the bits that my body tends to do, because I know I immediately sort of curl up and tense up. But to stretch those out, the number of times I stretch out and my body goes crunch, 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 crunch. And just doing that whole stretching of my body out is really useful. And breathing, saying, remember to take a breath. It sounds strange, but we just don't breathe properly, and it's all very much hard work. So those are the sorts of things, and I came away from the training with those little sort of nuggets of really useful information, thinking, I've got to adapt this in some way. I've got to use this in some way. So I still steps. For those people that are able to take part in groups, there are some fantastic groups. I do a lot of one-to-ones with my children because the children that I work with are just not in a position to be able to engage in group. And I have to sort of slip bits in and slip bits out, and we work in naturally. But I generally have in my mind that the steps as a sort of lesson plan, really. So if they're watching this, they're all going to know now, and they're going to catch me out. But it's just, you can, if you looked at my sessions, you'd see that that's how they would work.
And it's, I also find it's quite funny when if a coach or a teacher accidentally misses out one of the steps, the children will tell you, you've missed the breathing, miss.
Yes, absolutely. And it's just been very interesting how I've I've adapted some bits and twisted some bits, but it's almost like, sorry,
I was going to say, which of the 7 steps do you find children like the most?
Well, it depends. It really depends. The number of them that say to me, I love it when we relax at the end. And I love that bit, because it takes, sometimes it takes a while to work out how they best relax, because autistic bodies don't necessarily work the same as neurotypical bodies. They don't feel the same, they don't do the same, they don't operate the same. And it is worth me saying that actually, just because you feel like that, you can't assume that the child will feel like that. In the same way as if somebody kicked me on the shin, I would feel an amount of pain. But if I kicked you on the shin, you would feel a different amount of pain. We all feel things differently. We all experience the world differently. So, and I mean, I was saying, sorry, carry on.
Well, I was going to ask you, what results have you had working with children using the 7 steps with children with autism?
I've lots of results. I've had complete refusal, lots of complete refusal. So that means that I go, well, I have to think of how I'm going to do this differently. Because I'm the teacher, I'm the person that goes into that situation, then to be engaged. That's the way it is. And you're never going to expect to meet an autistic child halfway. They won't meet halfway. You have to meet them. That's the way it is, because that's why they're autistic. That's why their needs are that way. And if they are meeting you halfway, that's because they are interested. But it's just worth being aware of that actually it's your job to engage them. So very often they look at me and say, I'm not stretching. I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that. And at the start, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that. But at the end, there are some bits that they'll not engage in. But I have to be very clever how high I take them at the start, where I pitch that start. But I've got better at that, because some children are already way up here, way up there, and I've got to start at that level. But other children start somewhere along here, and that's okay. But you remember, you're starting there, and you've got to come down.
So, Paula, what can parents do, whether their children are autistic or not? What
Yeah.
can they do to help bring some calm to their home, to bring some calm to their children and calm to their family?
When I said I was doing this talk, both my husband and my daughter went, ha! Which probably says a lot. What I would say to you is, remember that calm is something you aim to be, that you can aim at. What you need to do is to become clever at reading the environment, reading the situation. So if you're driving along, if you think about it as driving along, you naturally when you get to a difficult section, when you've got to concentrate. If you're in a situation where you're trying to concentrate on something and you've got a ticking of a clock, and the ticking of the clock is going really distracting, as is somebody fluttering or something fluttering in the corner. Those things are really distracting. So I would say cut down on the distraction around. What is there in your space that is distracting? Now, it may be that you've got a number of children and they just literally go boom like that. Just make those little points during the day where they can go, where everybody's got a point to go. And I think that screens have a use, and can be very useful, particularly in regulating, self-regulating themselves. It's another tool that they can use. So it's about going, right, what part of my life is busy, is too busy, is too chaotic, and it's where you can bring calm there. If you try to do everything all at once, it's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. So I would say focus on one thing at a time. Focus on that thing that you can change. So we've had lots of issues around the special needs system, shall we say. It's probably the best way to put it, but like the EHCP and all of that. So there's not a lot I can do about it. I don't like the system. It doesn't particularly work very well, and it's very quite aggressive towards families. But I can't do anything about that. So it's worth thinking about, what can I change? I can't change that bit, but I can change bedtime. I can change breakfast, for example. Those are the things that I can change. So when way back, when Tim was very aggressive and Bex, my daughter, was getting hurt and all sorts of things, we started with coming in from school, because that was our trigger time. And that's the only bit we did, and we got that right, and I felt great because it worked.
Wow.
And I remember that, and it made me feel we go, oh, right, now we've cracked this, let's move on to something else.
Yeah.
Because that's good for your self-esteem, and it's good for you, and it's good for your kids.
Everybody, yeah.
So if you're more in control, your children will naturally be more in control. So I would say, don't try to do too much. The other thing is, just breathe, take a breath. Remember, you
Simple.
can't be everything to everybody, and it's
Mm.
okay to have that. There's a great website called Just a Minute, and it gives you little 1 minute things that that you can do just to get a little tiny window, and I'd highly recommend that. I've got I came across, I'm going to show you, the superheroes many years ago, and it was an absolute godsend at bedtime. Absolute godsend.
Just explain that one. So it's all the fairy stories turned. Yeah.
So it's things like Jack and Jill, the Snowman, Treasure Island, Aladdin's Magic Lamp, and they're turned into little meditations, really magical ones, and the children listen to those at bedtime. Bedtime music, and we put that on as they went to bed, and they settled. But that gave me time to spend a few minutes with the other one to just calm them. It literally was just a matter of, right, this is your time and this is your time. And the other thing I learned way back then is it's okay to treat children differently. It's okay, because that's what they need. I don't need the same as my sister, and vice versa. My son and my daughter have different needs, and it's okay to do that, because we get so hooked up with treating them all the same. Well, actually, it doesn't need to be that way. And giving myself permission to do those sorts of things was really good, because me and my husband worked together on issues, but that took time. That's possibly one of the hardest things, is doing things together, because my upbringing was very different from my husband's upbringing, and there's nothing wrong with either of them, but it meant that we were both working from two different templates.
Yeah.
And then having this big clash of us. And so we had to work out a plan, really. So it's worth doing those sorts of things, having time for ourselves. The audio things like that.
Would you say your family now are quite calm?
We are calmer. We're very different. I could, if they were listening, they would be laughing right now. We have moments. To imagine that any family is a calm family. I don't even know whether it's possible, but we have calm moments, and the DERM principle, and that is that, does it really matter? That DERM principle comes into play an awful lot. So we fight the stuff that we need to fight.
Yeah. Choose your battles. Yeah.
Choose the battles. Yeah. And I would say that's okay. And saying I'm okay, I'm just okay, is
I think we've lost Paula. So thank you very much. I feel calm speaking to Paula. So thank you so much. And that was how to be a calm parent and working with children with autism.